Continuous delivery is aspirational goal for most of us, and we're trying to figure out, a number of organizations, all of you, and most of us up here on the panel, trying to figure out how to do it. But more specifically, we need to figure out why we're doing it. So I'm David Grum. I worked at Gap until recently, last 8 years, and oversaw store systems development and integration with e-commerce applications, but also a number of the delivery tool chain. So some of the build systems, build organization, CI pipeline, et cetera. And when I joined Gap in 2006, they had just gone through their first step of an agile transformation. They had re-platformed their systems, merged a bunch of the different brand websites into a singular one. So it was awesome. It was a nice new shiny architecture I got to play a lot with. But very quickly we realized as we went into agile delivery, we wanted to leverage this investment, this new platform. There was almost no test coverage. There was very little automation. There were build gurus for every application that was part of this platform. And they weren't able to go as fast in terms of leveraging this new platform as possible. Granted, we didn't have a bunch of mainframe stuff to deal with, and so there was kind of a better situation than most of us. But as we adopted agile delivery processes, we realized we needed to go into more and more automation and to get some efficiencies here. And so that we could respond to the business. So all this is to say, why are we moving towards continuous delivery? Isn't 4 releases a year enough, or maybe 10 or 12, as opposed to releases every day? After all, on the retail side, maybe you can't train your store associates to take on new changes 10,000 times a day. But the reality is, and if we are agilists, the first principle up here is that our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of value, valuable software in this case. And so while maybe an end user isn't ready to do it, we shouldn't preclude us, we shouldn't build tools that are too slow to deliver on that goal. So most of us started with continuous integration. How do we integrate things more quickly? Then we move on to continuous or automated testing of some of the functional stuff, adding in automated unit testing and maybe some contract testing. And it tends to evolve, and for some of our organizations, it takes a long time, and for others, it's a little bit slower. But I definitely see that continuous delivery is an extension of that initial continuous integration goal. And making sure that we can actually, not only are we integrating fast and getting feedback to our engineers, but we're delivering it to production fast and getting feedback from our customers so that we can react to it. So big space. You guys are all here and all trying to struggle through figuring this out, as are we. Like I said, I think some of the areas that this panel is going to talk through today are around tools, because there are a ton of them out there. We're going to talk a little bit about processes, because tools are useful, but not if you can't use them all together. And we're going to discuss a little bit about environments and scaling. And then, to some degree, we'll see about adoption and culture. So with that, I'm going to introduce Farkan to introduce himself, actually, give us a little bit of a summary, and start talking a little bit about this plethora of tools that we have to choose from and how we go about figuring that out.
Yep. So hello to everyone. Farkan Khan. I'm with In Technology, focused on products and transformation. Prior to In Technology, I was the head of product management at Perforce, preaching the same religion that you heard from Andy. Actually, Andy is a good friend, and we've collaborated in the past. I'm really a products guy, so the lens I look at is that requirements lens, and if I'm evaluating a tool chain, what are some of the criterias or requirements that I would focus on? One of the ways to look at this category, the tool chain, clearly the constant there is fragmentation, and we heard quite a bit about that early on. Choice is another big one, and just the constant change that you see in this category. So these are kind of 3 constants that pervade this category. So I think as we are embarking on creating a strategy, the tool chain strategy, these are the overarching or background kind of context that we need to use. Now, that's a good segue into the key requirement that I see that I haven't really heard since this morning, and that is the developer and the designer choice and happiness. Ultimately, it's the developer, it's that designer that's creating things. He or she is the innovator. So whatever strategy you implement for your tool chain has to address that persona, that stakeholder. So what do developers, designers want? I mean, clearly they have a choice in terms of what's on their desktop. Am I an Eclipse person? Am I a NetBeans person? We need to support that requirement and make sure that our downstream systems are plugging into those environments and making that developer happy. Collaboration is another big component. Everyone talks about social coding and whatnot, but people are solving problems. They're creating things with code conversations, design conversation. That's the new creative process, that collaboration. So you want to make sure that's a key requirement you're addressing. Fast feedback loops. You don't want your developers, designers to sit there and eat their muffins and get bored. They want those results fast and furious. So again, you got to have a pipeline that supports that, that throughput. And that goes to my second point here. Whether you call it SDLC or continuous delivery pipeline, you need to have a foundational performance, this throughput that Andy actually was repeating many times, this extreme automation. Without that, none of this is possible. This vision of continuous delivery, feature toggles, releasing things even by the minute, that's just not possible. You need that extreme automation. And there's several ways to address that. One, of course, is scaling out. It's that compute cloud out there that gives you that local CI throughput, that release level CI throughput, all of those pieces. But there are also innovative areas such as slicing things into parallel or using parallelism. There's some new startups that are looking at this problem, how we could break things into pieces. You have test automation that you can split up and similar to kind of the Hadoop philosophy, and then bring it back and aggregate it back. So there's some creative ideas there. Visibility and consistency, being able to go to this place and get a view of your pipeline across projects and teams and expect the same results. Of course, the content is different, but I shouldn't have to relearn different dashboards and tools and whatnot. There should be some consistency there. And maybe I'm not suggesting that the consistency cuts across from design, dev, workflows, and cycles all the way to ops, because ops needs their operational dashboards and whatnot. But are they overall in flavor? Are they consistent? Can you trace something back and forth from here to there or from ops back and see where it's been, what are the dependency graphs here, and how was and where the problems lie? The other kind of low-hanging fruit is simplicity and ease of use. And here, what this is really, self-service. Empower that developer, designer to do things themselves. And it has to be simple. A developer should be focused on that feature, not on that build script. So that's another key anchor requirement that we need to focus on. And last but not least is your service abstraction. We were talking about microservices, and the bottom line here is you want to be future-proof. I mentioned the constant of change. The open source community is churning out things on a daily basis. Now we had Ant, Maven, now we have Gradle, and God knows what else is coming down the pipeline. And we have hybrid SCM environments, SVN. I was at Perforce Git, Perforce SVN, whatnot. Can you abstract these things into a service-oriented architecture so you can transition groups and projects seamlessly? So those are, I think, some of the, I would say, the 5 anchor requirements of themes that I would focus on in terms of your tool chain selection process.
Thank you. So obviously a lot of tools are out there, and they can all be used in a myriad of ways. Even the same tool can be used 1,000 different ways, as I've witnessed. We're going to standardize on Jenkins, yet there are 1,500 implementations of Jenkins with different plugins, seemingly, throughout the enterprise. So I think pulling the tools together into a tool chain that optimizes your the value or your time to deliver is really key. So I'm hoping, Kathy, you can introduce yourself and talk a little bit about Salesforce and how they've decided to kind of streamline these tools and, and stage them.
Absolutely. So I'm Kathy Polinsky. I'm a VP of Engineering at Salesforce. And I've been at Salesforce almost 5 years, which was 2 years after Salesforce did a major agile transformation. So in 2006, Salesforce is a 7-year-old company growing at crazy speed and was still a little bit scrappy. Used to being able to go really fast, but as the team grew, as the customers grew, they kind of hit this crisis point where they had a big service disruption, they had a major release slip, and then it slipped again, and pretty much in 2006, they did one major release the entire year. And so then early 2007, there was a huge executive decision that we're going to go all in, all agile. And kind of like Jeremy was saying, as far as like people were like, are you crazy? They went from doing complete waterfall to agile in 3 months. And it was a top-down decision, executive support. Every single team was reorganized so that we had intact teams for all the scrums. And a lot of coaching and support to get the transformation through. A lot of it came down to automation and process. So at the time, 2006, I think they had less than 5,000 tests that were being run. And now at Salesforce, we have 100,000 tests that get run with every single check-in. So just a huge change in automation that's happened. And then we really set up the right structure for teams as far as the rules and process that all teams have to follow. And then supported this bottoms-up development. So within that framework, teams can innovate and choose which aspects of Agile they want to do, as long as they're within that same confines of the process. So we have a pretty rigorous process in place for ensuring every change has a code review. And the code review is there to just give that checks and balances with a team. There's a lot of requirements around making sure every single change list, every single bug has automation against it. So the code coverage that we have is pretty phenomenal at Salesforce. We have a lot of tools in place then during the check-in process. We're a big Perforce shop right now. And we have hooks in place so that during the check-in process, there's a pre-check-in script that makes sure that there's a code reviewer on every change list, that there's a bug attached with every change list, that there's automation that's specified for that change list as well. And then we do have a centralized server that runs that pre-check-in to make sure that none of the check-ins are ever going to break the build, and it will reject the change before it gets submitted. And then, as I mentioned, we have hundreds of thousands of tests that get run in this continuous integration environment at Salesforce. And we've broken them up into these different suites so that you can have a basic set of tests that get run extremely fast, and you'll know if you've made any serious changes right away, and the teams will be able to react. We a little embarrassed to say, but some of our changes take a couple days to actually get the results back, just because of the massive number of results it takes, plus all the integration setup that has to take. And I think we just also need to invest more in the infrastructure and number of servers and distributedness of what we have. But there's a lot of work that we've done in the tooling for this test failure management infrastructure. We have our own system that's really tracking down who it is that changed the code that caused the test failure, and auto-assigning that bug to the team, and monitoring the thresholds of all the suites to make sure that we're staying healthy and green at all times.
You mentioned a little bit about the feedback loop,
Yeah.
right? And one of my questions I think I have is, each stage of this is, you have a number of stages up here, which does not yet include deploy to production.
Right.
Why so many stages, I guess? And then what happens maybe when something fails later in the stage than earlier? How do the engineers react or the teams react to that?
Yeah, so if you break a test, it should be drop everything. Developers should be working on the changes. We've had a lot of problems with that over the years. We used to have a rotation. All dev managers had to be on this build master rotation, and pretty much the job was just to babysit and like run around and figure out like who broke which test and are they following up to fix it. We had problems before a major release where we've had to do this like major lock the line policy where no new changes can happen across the company until the test failures get above a certain threshold. And this always caused a boomerang effect where as soon as the code lines open back up, everybody would rush to check in their changes, and then the bill would break and we'd be back where we started. And so what we've done is we've instituted this policy about a year ago, and it was extremely controversial, but we said, okay, if we had a certain like SLA that we were expecting each teams who were doing these major changes to meet. If you made any changes, if you broke any changes into our basic test suite, you had a day to fix it. And if you didn't fix it, you know, that would not be good. But you'd have 5 days to fix something in like one of our UI test framework layers. And we then instituted this thing where we would lock the line just for the team. So the team would get locked out of making changes until they fix their bugs, and then they would be open back up. It was pretty controversial because it felt heavy-handed to do, but since the rollout, we haven't had any problems. We've never had to lock the line since then, and the teams have been following up. Sometimes tests get assigned to the wrong team, and they're a little irritated by that, but pretty much it's been very smooth since.
All right. Thank you. So feedback is important. Obviously, each part of the pipeline is intended to give us something actionable and something that we can deal with as engineers or managers of the team so that we know what's kind of going on in the pipeline. Yasser, I'd like you to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about feedback loop. And the slide up here, you can describe that a little bit. But importantly, kind of the cultural shift that goes behind this within Macy's.
Yeah. So I'm Yasser Anwar. I'm Group Vice President for Customer Applications and Platforms. That includes all the glass sizes which serve our customers. So I'm going to share my lens I wear for CD, and I'm going to start from why do I need CD and CI. I think there are tons of experts in the room. I'm going to hear continuously. We're going to talk about different phases and different toolings. So I'm going to share why do I need CD and why do I need it accurate, why do I need it fast. And I've drank the Kool-Aid, I'll be bold. What Steve Jobs said, that always start with the customer experience and work it backwards into your process and technologies and not go the other way around. I drank that Kool-Aid like 2.5 years ago and stuff, and continuously doing it and trying to share it with other people in the company also. And ties back to the lean development thing, and you would be surprised to say, hey, Macy's and lean development is for startups. But in my analogy, I think startups don't have any other thing to do. They have to be lean. While the biggest challenge is to go in an enterprise and disrupt it in a way where you create startup-like teams within the Macy's, and that's where we are on the journey. And it's not I won't say it's like not theory. It's not we have started. We have successfully implemented lean development. I'm the founder of our Macy's Idea Labs and lean development teams. And one of the examples I can give you is if you go to App Store and search for Macy's image search, that's an application our 8 developers developed in 30 days, working days, which would have taken us 6 months if we go through even agile development practices. So the difference, and we have launched a minimum viable product, and we're going to continuously launch more versions of this application, but that has hit into the hands of the customer. So that's the key I'm trying to drive, is like how can I push good features and the right features in the hands of the customers, and then experiment with them and let the customers, not somebody's executive hot sports opinion saying, hey, let's build this, throw $5 million on that feature and build it. It's about let the customers tell where do I invest next $200K of my development and my development cost. And Agile is great, and I think we've been on this journey for 10 years. In my personal philosophy, Agile is like you're building lightweight cars like Nissan Leaf or Toyota Hybrid, and you have a smooth road from going point A to B, and B being the point where it's in the hands of the customers, A is your development shop. But who are you boarding in your cars to take it to the point B is the key, and that is not solved by Agile itself. That is solved by the lean development practices where your business stakeholders are in with you and they are deciding what passengers I'm going to onboard at this point in my Nissan Leaf and port them to point B where they'll be productive into the hands of the customers. So that primarily is a thing which I'm trying to drive at Macy's, and we have been successfully doing it over the period of time. And we continue to do and disrupt more and more. And we're going to scale in 15, and we're going to have tons of lean development teams out there in Macy's. This slide, I think, as I said, so many slides have been shown, so it's not a very, very unique slide, but it shows more of a time series function on a developer feedback aspect of it. If you see from the left onwards, what I have seen and felt is like, yes, I think the gentleman, I think Andy, or who was talking about the customer feedback and do the one single big chunk and do the merging code of there. What I've felt is developers, if they don't have a small sandbox environment to play with their feature, with their project, with their topic, and all they do is check in code into a big trunk, and each of the check-in is going to kick in automated tests, even though they're automated, it creates a big pipeline, big queue of things for the developers waiting for that feedback, and the feedback loop itself becomes very long. So in my mind, if you want to go lean and agile and deploy features into the hands of the customer faster and faster and try experimentations, you got to make sure that your feedback loop to your developers is very fast. And in a topic branch type of concept, if you look at this slide, it should be 1 or 2 minutes. I check in a code as a developer, in 2 minutes I should run a minimum viable test suite that tells me, okay, my feature is fine. And then you progress, and you all know the different phases, and then from a timing perspective, then you get the feedback increase for 1 and 2 hours. You go to 2 to 4 hours, depending on integration tests you're going, where you're merging. Then your other feature set, other teams, services team, they merge their code into the trunk, and then you're testing. So you progress your code accordingly, and then the feedback loop of 2 days or 1 day is okay in some cases, because your teams have already done tons of work, and they know when it's going to hit there. The problem will not be in my code. It may be an integration, a load balancing problem, a routing problem, not precisely a code problem. So I think, and then the tests also progress. You start with minimum viable tests, you keep increasing the number of tests you run, and automate the heck out of your system. That's the best way. A lot of questions were asked about, depending on the heroes who coded 5 years ago, how do we remove those dependencies? You automate the heck out of the system. And my partner in crime, Gary Groover, is sitting, and he's sort of one of our agile or CD coach here. He's written books, and he's helping me in creating this friction, removing the friction out of this pipeline at Macy's. And I don't want to steal his thunder about automation test case. He loves it, and he's building it, so I would let him speak to that later in the day. So that was my lens to CD.
Thank you very much. Satish, maybe you can introduce yourself in just a second, but I want the focus of this one to be on environments, because as we have more and more elaborate pipelines, and we're doing different kinds of testing in each stage of these pipelines, and you mentioned parallelism as a way of kind of reducing the speed, or reducing how long it takes to get something done, and we're doing this at scale. Environment management can be tricky. And we have a lot more tools today than we've had in the past. We don't have static, we're not locked to static hardware that we used to, because now we can provision stuff in the cloud, whatever. Can you tell a little bit about your pipeline and how that works at StubHub, and even if it contrasts a little bit with eBay previously?
Sure, thank you. I'm Satish Nair. I work at StubHub. I run the quality and release engineering teams there. Work for Raji here, who was on the panel before. Just to give you guys context, so we have been in agile transformation, I would say, for maybe around 3 years. The focus has been about improving agility. And the realization is that, like all of you already know, that we can't get a feature right the first time. So the unique advantage we give the business is the ability to try different things quickly and figure out what works and what doesn't work. So with respect to the environment management, I just want to tell you that this is what we do. This is not best practice that I'm proposing, but this is what's working for us, and we're on a journey, and we are learning, and we do the same agile principles in our process and tools as well. The key here is, I'll echo what others on the panel have said, is to provide good, consistent feedback fast, and to make sure that you don't have false positives, and because then the credibility of the system gets lost. So what we do is we have environments that are specifically purpose-built, and they do one thing and they do that well. And then we string up as many of these as we want. We haven't gotten to a state where the provisioning is dynamic at this point, but we started measuring the time it takes us to provision. So so think of it in 2 buckets. We provision and then we deploy. So the provisioning bucket used to be in weeks. Right now, it's close to 4 hours. And the deployment bucket used to also be in weeks, and right now we're also able to do that in hours. So the difference, what we are doing here is making sure that we mimic production as much as possible. So it's not a different standard for the test and these stage environments and a different standard for the development environments. We do this. We try to use the same exact tools and the same exact processes that we use in production. So there's no concept of a rebase from start, because you don't do that in production. In production, you actually have an environment, unless that server goes down, you don't rebase it. You actually just add software to it, and you have to make sure that everything works. That's pretty much what it is. I won't go through all of this in detail, but we have two concepts. One is an on-demand kind of a concept, which is for the teams or the developers who are tasked with getting stuff out as fast as possible. Then we have this other side, which is the ops team and the people who have responsibility of keeping the site up. And what they do is they make sure that stuff that doesn't work doesn't get in. So we have that balance that we have set up in our processes and our teams that reflects in this environment management as well. So for example, when you're trying to certify a release, those environments are dynamically created automatically. Nobody can decide what needs to be created on those environments.